All right, welcome everyone to another Wednesday webinar. And I just want to thank you guys for joining today. This is partway through this series, so we still have several weeks left, and it's going to be every Wednesday at 9 o'clock Central Time. And so today we're going to talk about analyzing your brand and what that means. Just to give you a heads up, I'll talk about it again at the end. But next week, we're going to be talking about your digital presence report card. So really talking about what presence looks like and how would we rate that and what are some areas we can improve. So I'll kind of mention that again at the end. But today, I guess I just really want to dive into analyzing your brand. So as we go into this today, I would encourage you to think about your own company. You can sure think about, friends or families or others that you know that are entrepreneurs or working in a business. But then also think about the businesses that you know and love every day. We all kind of have those go-to companies, whether it's where we go to get our oil change, where we go to get coffee, whatever that looks like. But whether it's consciously or subconsciously, we all pick where we're going to go to do those things, where we're going to bank, where we're going to buy groceries. We're making a decision on where we're going to go. Now, hopefully, these companies have spent some time to analyze their brand like we're going to do today. Hopefully, it's not just a coincidence. But I kind of want you to think about those companies that if I said, if you had to go today to buy a birthday card, where would you go? Or if you had to go today to get a tire changed, where would you go? Those are choices that we make. Again, oftentimes we're just ingrained in where we pull into, and oftentimes that's based on a lot of different things, as far as maybe how much time we have, what kind of budget we're on. There's a lot of different things that can affect that. But we make a decision for a reason. And so today, I would challenge you to kind of switch your thinking, part of the time from the entrepreneur and from the business owner, and then part of the time from the consumer. And hopefully, if you can put on your consumer hat, that'll help you put yourself in your customer's shoes and maybe think of things through their perspective. So, before we get started, are there any questions before we jump into it today? All right, we have a lot of information to cover, but we do have these handouts that we can make sure to get you in an email. We have these in PDF form, so you can go over them again later. And this is also recorded, so if you'd like to watch it back, but I would encourage you to have pens and papers and take some notes and really use this hour as almost like a workshop, so that you can walk away with something that's personalized to your business. So we're going to start here by really just talking about what does analyzing your brand mean? And so we're going to go into that first. So when we talk about analyzing your brand, what is the goal of a brand audit? That's, again, kind of an abstract term. So a brand audit evaluates your brand from a consumer or customer's perspective. When someone hears of your name or sees your logo, what do they think? An effective brand identity should communicate who you are, what you do, why you do it, and who you serve. So sometimes in the branding world, especially when people are picking out a name for their business, they try to incorporate all of this into a business name. And sometimes they can do it. Like if your name is, Budget Tires for All, you can kind of answer those questions. But oftentimes people with their business name try to be very literal, and they try to cover who they are, what they do, why they do it, and who they serve, all in their business name. And that's not really an effective way to market. And that's why we really push the idea of a brand. Because with your brand, it doesn't have to all be on just the name, but a brand is something that's built over time, and then hopefully can have all these pieces to it. So let's talk about one more time. A brand audit evaluates your brand from a consumer perspective. When someone hears your name or sees your logo, what do they think? An effective brand identity should communicate who you are, what you do, why you do it, and who you serve. So let's think about that a little bit, again, just from the consumer side. If I see the logo of Starbucks, instantly a few things pop into my head, and they're going to be different for everyone. But if you saw the logo of Starbucks, and obviously they've had years and years and years and millions and billions of dollars of marketing, but what word or what couple things pop into your mind when you see the Starbucks logo? Does anyone want to chime in, unmute yourself and tell me?
Coffee.
Coffee. So you already kind of know what they do. Okay. Anyone else? It could even be kind of an emotion or something that kind of triggers when you see that logo.
I like automatically just remember like the smell of coffee when I see the Starbucks sign.
Okay. Yeah. Richard, how about you?
Starbucks reminds me of when I was living out in Seattle, all the rainy days.
Okay.
So that's what
Perfect. So,
Starbucks reminds me of.
yeah. See, and to me, Starbucks probably reminds me of like long lines, just because we just have right now we have one Starbucks here in Grand Island, and sometimes you think, oh, I'm just gonna grab a coffee real quick, and then you end up sometimes I'll get stuck in that line, and someone will get behind me, and I'm in that line for I don't go there enough to use the mobile app like I should, and so I think, oh, I'm just gonna just go through the drive-thru real quick. And then 20 minutes later, I'm frustrated and I'm running late, and I don't even have time to drink my drink by the time I get to my next meeting. And so for some reason, Starbucks nowadays to me is kind of a sign of frustration. And again, obviously Starbucks has addressed that through their mobile pickup and things like that. So that's more on myself. But again, Starbucks is not trying to make their brand frustrating, right? No brand would. But part of their brand identity to me is a long drive-through line, right? And so that's why we have to think about it, because sometimes as a business owner, we think, oh, we have the best quality and the best customer service, and we do this and we do that, we do that. But if the customers, if all they see is a long line or inconsistent business hours or rude customer service, then that's their brand identity and that's their audit. April, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to add to that. That's
No,
why I tried not to comment. I'm trying to keep the morning positive because the one near my house is right on a four-corner intersection. However, the driveway to get into it is right there. And so when people make the left turn, on that intersection to get in there is right there. And so there's lots of wrecks right there because people making that turn. So I was trying to keep that then I'm thinking addiction, I'm thinking car wrecks, when I associate to Starbucks. So
Starbucks, absolutely.
that's kind of why I didn't want to comment.
No.
But I'm so glad you had shared what you thought about it,
No, I know when the Dunkin' Donut just came to Grand Island, it's located on a highway. I mean, it's a street we use in town, a highway that goes through town, but the drive-through line would go onto the highway. And I mean, they literally had to have cops go and tell people, like, you can't you can't be stopped on a highway. So yeah, sometimes coffee does equate to things like that. And so that's just what we want to be aware of. So obviously there's always good things with a brand, but sometimes there can be not necessarily even bad things, but maybe frustrating things as well. And so when you think of a brand, again, if we just said Nike, everyone's going to have a different association with that word. Or if we say even a smaller brand, even if I said something local, like, the local restaurant down the street, maybe even if it's not a national brand, everyone's going to have a little bit of a different perception of the brand. But that's what makes a logo or a name or a color scheme a little bit different than a brand, because brand really is everything. It's how it smells when you walk in. It's the temperature they keep the restaurant. It's what kind of straws they use. It's, everything. And so when we talk about your company's brand, again, it's sometimes you go simply to the product, but a brand is really this all-encompassing word that is often mixed with feelings and smells and memories and sometimes frustrations and sometimes happy things and sometimes things that aren't even correlated, again, like car accidents, but for some reason to us, that's part of the brand. And now companies need to do a brand audit because let's say that Starbucks continues to put their stores on corners and they continue to see these accidents. They may need to do a brand audit and say, we don't want people to think of car accidents when they see our logo. Obviously, that wasn't intentional. And so they may need to make that shift. And so that's really a long introduction, but I really want you to grasp what a brand is, first of all, which again is the product, the why, the who, the owners, the store, the smell, the feeling, the textures. We always say if your brand was an animal, if your brand was a superhero, if your brand was a food, which seems silly, but if I said, let's pretend again that someone had a shoe store. And I said, if your brand was a food, what would it be? And somebody said, oh my gosh, it would be the fanciest steak dinner you've ever had. And somebody said, oh, and then another shoe store said, our brand would be comfort food. It would be mac and cheese and chicken pot pie. Just by their answers, we would know kind of what their shoe store is like, maybe as far as price point, as far as quality, as far as customer service. And so that all feeds into that brand. And so again, a brand is not a logo, it's not a color palette, it's really everything. And it's our emotions on how we feel as well. All right, so now we're going to dig into that a little bit more now that we really understand brand. Okay, so now we're going to talk about understanding your primary differentiator. So the step of a brand audit is to determine what makes you different than your competitors, which comes from knowing your market and industry. So when we talk about competitors, sometimes people think of that as negative, of everything that your competitor is doing has to be negative. So it's easy to say, tell me about your competitors. And people say, oh, they're overpriced and they're rude and they don't have the stuff and blah, 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 blah. And sometimes it's easy to go that route. And there probably are a handful of those things. But we always encourage people that sometimes your competitors are doing things right. And that's okay. It's okay to give them credit where it's due. It's okay to say, man, they really have understood this social media game and they're crushing it on social media. Or maybe they stay open all day on Sundays. That's something that they do. Now, whether it's good or bad, it's okay to acknowledge a competitor, not just in a negative light. And if we really try to build each other up and realize that there's enough for everyone, we can kind of move out of that scarcity role of our competitors are our enemies and really think of them a little bit more just on paper. And that's what we're going to try to do today. So let's try to take our emotion out of it, whether you love your competitors, as people or not. Let's take the emotion out of it as if we didn't know them and pretend as if we're just moved to town and we didn't know either of the owners and we saw their business and your business. So let's talk about that again, a little bit more just on paper. So your primary differentiator is one of the most important parts of your brand. What can you say about your business that others can't? Focus on the most compelling benefit to your target customers. It should be something that your brand owns relative to your competitors. This is important. If your competitors are doing it that way too, then it's not a primary differentiator. I have a hard time with that word. So really what we're saying is, again, think on paper on what areas you're different. So maybe they're open on Sundays and you don't want to be open on Sundays. You don't need to do the same thing as them, but maybe you decide that you're going to stay open on Thursday nights to help people who work those later hours. So maybe you're open till 9 o'clock on Thursday nights and they close at 5. So the thing that sets you apart is that you're open later on Thursday nights. And you could really advertise on how, you want to be accessible to everyone. And we know you're working long hours. Come see us Thursday nights. We're open late for you. And so you don't have to bash what your competitors are doing or throw them under the bus or publicly compare. But we really just want to look at the ways that you're doing things differently. So if they're carrying these brands, maybe you're carrying these brands. If maybe you have an all-female staff, that's something that you can advertise and something that's different. Maybe you're a family business. Maybe this is a 3rd generation. That's something you might have different. So again, it can be more than location and hours. It can be how you do things like online ordering, websites, maybe you have carside pickup. It can be who you are. It could be, again, if you're a family business, if your kid works with you in your business. But then it can also be why you do it. So maybe a primary differentiator is why. We always talk about the why. Why do you come to work? Why do you come to work? So maybe your business gives back to a little league baseball team. That could be something that sets you apart and something that's different. And so I'd really encourage you to spend some time and make a list. And there's obviously going to be things that you're both doing, but really make a list of things that you're doing differently. And again, think beyond the product, but think of you as a person and maybe your story. Obviously, everyone's story is different. And so your story, your experiences, your background, that's all going to be something that's different than your competitors. And that's something that you should focus on in your marketing. So let's go through this and then I'll have some time for questions. So step 1 to this is understand what your customers want. Look for what your target customers really want from you and your competitors' products or services. Then identify any gaps in what they're looking for that neither you nor your competitors offer. Once you've exhausted your own ideas, ask your client base. They are your most valuable resource. If you are just starting out, consider doing a simple market survey. Last week, we talked a lot about your target customers. So your target customers are the customers that, when you work with them, it just fills your cup. They're awesome. They, whatever that looks like to you. Maybe it's what they spend. Maybe it's their attitude. Maybe it's the number of back and forth conversations. So we really focused on last week. So if you weren't here, I'd encourage you to go back and watch last week's video because we talked about your target customers and how to identify them and how we want to spend the majority of our effort and our energy on our target customers and not on customers that aren't those targets, because oftentimes we can be exhausted because we're spending our time with people who aren't our target customers because they're making us work not how we want to run our business. So again, if you're not quite sure what that target customer looks like, I would encourage you to visit that from last week. Here are a few just couple fun facts that we put together. Did you know 45% of a brand's image can be attributed to what they say and how they say it? 64% of customers cite shared values as the main reason they have a relationship with the brand. So if you're family oriented, make sure you share that, because other people who are family oriented, they may decide to use your brand because of that alone. Maybe you are a single working mother. And if you can share that in the right way, you may build that relationship with other people who can relate. That third step is B2B customers, business to business customers, are more than 2 times likely to consider a brand that shows personal value over business value. So again, that personal value of being honest, being loyal, being upfront over just having the best deal. Your customers' expectations will be both rational, always deliver service on time, and emotional, they never talk down to me. Between those two, customers will generally be more loyal to a brand if they feel more emotionally attached to it. Think of the brands that you are most loyal to. What drives that dedication? And how can you create that in your business's brand? So let's take a couple minutes here and just talk about that. So again, it was really talking about, the rational, which is the like on paper. So again, rationally, Starbucks does a fine job. And rationally, I know that I can download the app. But emotionally, I don't want to use the app and I don't have time to sit in their drive through. So that kind of shows the rational versus the emotional. Emotionally, I have two friends that own coffee shops here in town. So I'm more likely to support them because emotionally, I am supporting their local business. Even though rationally, it's probably more consistent at a Starbucks. So again, there's kind of that two sides of the stone. So you can think about, it's often easy to look at a business from a business standpoint and rationally figure out why they would be a good person to work with. But if you walk in the door and you feel rushed or someone's rude to you, or again, someone talks down to you, like in that example, they're probably not going to keep your business, or that person's not going to be loyal to you because more of an emotional connection. Does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions on that piece before we move on? Something kind of new to wrap our heads around. Tara, did you have something?
No, I understand.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of keep that in mind again, the rational versus the emotional. And I would challenge you this week as you're making buying decisions, think about it. What strikes you? Because it's going to be different for everyone. Another example, you know how Walmart and most places are going to like a self-checkout model. Rationally, I like it because I'm in a hurry and sometimes I don't want to have, rationally, I like it. I do think it's faster, but emotionally, it's hard for me because then that whole conversation of like, but then you lose that face-to-face interaction, and this could be taking jobs and things like that. So that's one thing that I'm torn on, and you're going to have people that are torn in your business as well, and you can't please everyone. So you really, at the end of the day, have to do what's right for your business. You have to think of what you can stand behind. But that's where it's good to get that feedback. I'm sure Walmart has been doing a lot of surveys of, do you like doing self-checkout more than going through a line? And I would imagine it's probably pretty split. You probably have, say, 50% of people that like the self-checkout and 50% that like the in-person. And so at that point, Walmart either has to do some kind of hybrid, which they still have here in my town, or they're going to have to make a business decision of what makes best for their business. But it is important, if you really don't know what your customers want, it's okay to ask them and just say, hey, we're considering staying open later on Thursday nights. Is that something that would help you? And maybe they'll say, oh, that would be great. I always rush to get here by 5. Or maybe they say, it doesn't really matter to me either way. I have a pretty flexible schedule. But feel free to ask customers. And actually, when you ask customers what they want, that can gain loyalty because they felt heard. And so by asking, you're not bothering them. That can actually be an impactful way to gain loyal customers and, again, help them feel like they have input. So step 2, determine your key strengths and weaknesses against your competitors. Again, this doesn't all have to be negative, but really think of what you are doing better and maybe with the ways they're beating you in some areas. So consider 2 to 4 major competitors. We always encourage doing someone local and then also someone that you look up to, maybe someone that's in the next town over or someone that's far enough away that you're not competing directly over customers. So consider your 2 to 4 major competitors, including in the market leader or a runner-up if you are the leader. So again, when we talk about leader, that's people that we think are really doing a good job. Your focus should be filling the gaps between what you and your competitors offer and what your customers want. Carve out a niche within the industry, geography, target personas, depending on the areas you are competing in. When looking at your strengths and weaknesses, examine what differentiates your business from the competitors. If you don't see much, change it. What makes your brand better or worse, and what can you do to improve in those areas? So one thing we always talk about is when we're talking about analyzing our brand and being different than our brand, you don't want to be the exact same as your brand. And so if they're open from 8 to 5, some people say, well, then I'm going to be open from 8 to 5. But again, then you're the exact same. So you may want to find a way to be a little bit different. Again, maybe staying open one extra night. If your competitor carries these 3 brands, and then you may not want to carry those exact 3 same brands, because the more you are similar to your competitor, the only thing you can compete on is the price. And as businesses, we realize that there's only so much wiggle room now more than ever in that price. So if you carry the same brands and you're near each other in the same location and you have the same hours and the same number of employees, the only thing you can compete on is price. And then you find yourself cutting and cutting and cutting until neither of you are succeeding. And so maybe you can find another brand that they don't carry, and then you can set that price point at what makes more sense to you versus what's going to be cheaper than the next guy. We don't want to compete over price unless we absolutely have to. There's a lot of other things we can make different. So step 3 is we're going to find the key features and benefits of your product or services. So what makes something a key feature or benefit is that it links back to your customers' needs and desires better than your competitors. If you want your customers to keep buying your products or services, give them a reason to. Your primary differentiator helps with this, especially in today's competitive world. Remember, you don't have to do this alone. If you have employees, business partners, or work with consultant agencies, leverage their insights into minds of your customers. And you should now be able to choose one key feature and its benefit that'll give you a primary differentiator. Once you know what that is, you can maintain and develop it over time. So again, you don't have to do this alone. Ask your employees, what do you think we do different or better than anyone else? And it might be something small. It might say, we have the best customer service than anywhere else. Whenever I go into the other store, I'm never greeted. Okay, that's something we can do better than anywhere else. At Tally, I own a marketing agency, a branding agency, and one of the things we say are we are thought leaders in the industry. So if something new is coming out in the market, our goal is to research it and become experts faster than anyone else. So one way that we've shown that is we're expanding into podcasts, and we want to be the thought leader in podcasts in our area. And so we are continuously learning, buying the latest and greatest equipment. We are reading articles and blogs and listening to other podcasts about how to create great podcasts. So that's one way that we are being thought leaders, and that's something that sets us apart from our competitors. Okay, we're gonna go on to step 3 here. We're almost done here. So understanding your additional advantages. The next step is to break down your additional advantages to support the primary differentiator. After all, doing only one thing really well is sometimes not enough to create sustainable competitive advantage. So determining these secondary items can be figured out by breaking your brand down into distinct building blocks. So let's talk through these a little bit more, and these could kind of help you think about, is there anything that we're doing different in these different areas? So service superiority in the market. Your business and your employees set the standard of quality within your market area. Your customer communities, personas, or anywhere you compete against others. So again, are you answering the phone faster than your competitors? Are you calling them back faster than they are? Maybe you can get your quotes turned around in the same day. That's something that you could set apart, and that's on the service side. Again, that has nothing to do with price, but all about service. Product superiority in the market. Your products and services are noticeably better and more or more unique than your competitors. And you can demonstrate that fact. Businesses, ambiance matters too. Consider whether a burger tastes better at Hard Rock Cafe than at your house. The ambiance of a business can make a huge difference in your product superiority. So again, think about if you have a product, how are you displaying it on your shelves? Are you making a beautiful display, or are you just sitting on a shelf? We have a boutique down the street and they sell a chalk paint that is a very high-end chalk paint that people use to like flip furniture or to refurbish furniture. Now this paint has, I don't know the person's name because I'm not really a paint person, but anyway, a very high-end DIY famous person, this is her line of paint. And so they have a beautiful display where they have a chair that's half painted with this paint. And then they have the paint and the paintbrush, and they have it set up as if you could just walk over there and finish this DIY project. And I thought that was a very unique way to show this product, because if this paint just would be sitting on the shelf, especially in a paint can, you don't really get to see the texture and the color and everything like that. And so by showing it actually in work, that's a way that they created the ambience of this product. And so think about the products that you have, and think about, even if your competitor is offering the exact same product, maybe you can set it up on an end cap or in a window display somewhere that shows off your product better. So that's something you can think about. Again, that it doesn't cost you anything, or it doesn't cost you much. The next piece here is efficiency leading to lower costs. So your business is run with less overhead than your competitors, and you can provide lower prices over time. So this could be ways to look at those. Maybe you have a slow time of day and right now you have 2 employees, and during that time you could cut down to 1. Or maybe again, maybe no one comes before 9, but you're opening at 7. So maybe you could shift your hours a little bit. So finding those little ways, not to cut corners, but to lessen your overhead. That is one way that can help your business, because over time you could lower costs on your prices or add additional features. Expertise. You and your employees can provide expertise that your competitors can't match, providing additional value to your customers and increasing their level of trust in your business. Again, become the expert. Nowadays with YouTube and online lessons like this, you can become that expert. So if there's something that you want to learn about, again, back to that example, maybe this paint, you want to become an expert in. Watch everything, read everything you get your hands on. And when people come in your store and you can be an expert and say, this is how I like to use this product, that's going to set you above your competitors. The next is market responsiveness. You can see trends coming faster than your competitors and stock newer, more desirable products sooner. Your customers trust your judgment about new products or trends that they haven't seen before. So again, being on those blogs, reading the magazines of what's coming next. So right now we're in spring. So maybe you're already trying to think ahead of what summer is going to bring, maybe even what could be trending for fall. And you could stay on those trends faster than your competitors that are maybe working retroactively. If you can look at some of those buyers as inspiration. If you want to know what's coming up in the design world, even just going to Hobby Lobby, you'll see kind of what they're anticipating is coming next. But someone is doing that research. Then the last one is the technological advantages. So getting insight from data puts you in an advantage to better understand these needs of an individual. It lets you personalize your marketing and makes you look smarter, more reliable, easier to work with than your competitors. So this is really when we get into that digital world, whether it be social media or your website, just really using those tools to your advantage and making sure that you can stay at top of your competitors. So that's something that we talk about on a consistent basis. And like I said, next week, the theme is going to be your online presence report card. I want to bring up a quick flyer for that here as I'm talking about it. So really analyzing what your online, what you look like online right now, and then how you could adjust that. So what are some ways that you could bring that to the next level and be doing it to be ahead of your competitors. On social media, there are so many analytics. I know that we use in our agency Facebook as one of our primary social media platforms, and they provide so many analytics that you can use for free, and that can really help you using that data. So again, if you're not using social media now, or if you want to take a look at what that online presence looks like, I would encourage you to join us next week. All right, we just have one more point, and then we're gonna have some time for questions and just hopefully some good discussion. So this last piece, number 4, moving forward. So after working through the brand audit questions and organizing your brand elements, there are a few ways to move forward with this new insight and information. Number 1, keep your product's pricing as identity as it is. So maybe after you've gone through this audit, you feel pretty good. And you're okay, this was very helpful, but I really feel like I'm in a good place. Number 2 is to overhaul one or more of these elements to head in a new direction. So maybe you're saying, oh man, I should really, my hours are crap right now. And maybe this is a good time, maybe May 1st or maybe May 21st, go into some new hours and really change things around. And number 3 is just a refresh. So maybe you just need to take an area, and again, maybe just extend that Thursday night. Maybe you don't need to change all of your hours, but just kind of do one little thing that's going to continuously evolve your brand. So let's just do a quick recap, and then we're going to have some time for questions here. So again, let's go back to that very beginning. What is a brand audit? Hopefully this makes more sense now. A brand audit evaluates your brand from a consumer perspective. When someone hears your name, sees your logo, what do they think? An effective brand identity should communicate who you are, what you do, why you do it, and who you serve. So again, it's really just taking the time. And if you don't have the time during this hour, I would encourage you to gather your leaders of your organization, or maybe of your business, or maybe it's just you, and that's okay. Maybe it's you and a spouse, and really take an hour or two and go through a brand audit. Try to understand what makes you different from your competitors. You need to know what your customers want, and if you don't know, ask them. Then you need to determine what your key strengths and weaknesses are against your competitors. And it's okay to admit that your competitors have strengths. We all do, and we all have weaknesses. So by saying that your competitor has a strength, that doesn't mean that overall you think that they're doing a better job than you. Step 3, find key features and benefits in your products and services. So again, what do you want to feature in something that you already are doing, and how can you take that to that next level? You need to understand your additional advantages. So again, pick 1 or 2 of these and find the way that you're doing it better. And if you can't think of something, find one of these ways that you want to improve. So again, maybe it is your expertise. Maybe it's the expertise of your staff. Maybe you know everything there is to know about your products, but maybe your staff, when someone says, what would you recommend? Maybe your staff doesn't have a good answer to that. And so it might just be making sure that they feel confident to be experts in the industry. And then step 4, do something. So even if you do this brand audit and you decide just to keep what you're doing, make that decision, or decide if you need to do a full overhaul, or if you just a refresh would be good enough. So out of those 3 things, a keep, an overhaul, or a refresh. For those of you on the call today, if anyone would like to share maybe which level you're at, and maybe just a couple quick ideas on how you're going to put that into action. Is there anyone on the call that would like to share?
I took a break from my little business and haven't really, well, I'm trying to get back into it. That's why I'm doing this. So
Okay.
I haven't really gotten to evaluate what I used to do, I guess. It's been a couple years.
Yeah, but now would be a great time to, as you're going back into it, now would be a great time to really do that audit and just kind of, think through those things. And again, compare what your competitors are doing. And maybe you're going to have to do some more research, because maybe what your competitors were doing before maybe is different than now. So you don't want to assume anything. And yeah, absolutely. I would recommend doing one of these brand audits, maybe once a year, maybe sooner, if new customers or new competition pops up. So let's say you feel like you're in a really good place, and then all of a sudden a new store that does something very similar pops up on the other side of town. That might be a good time to, again, not that you need to copy them, but you might want to say, okay, yeah, they're really doing a good job at this. And maybe that's okay because they're doing really good maybe on their online sales, but we're doing really good with our delivery. So that's okay. But maybe you want to say, oh, they have some good ideas with their online sales. And maybe there's some ways that we can not necessarily copy them, but reevaluate what we're doing and really answer to what customers are wanting. Yeah, April, what do you want to add?
Well, I don't know, but I do music, and I'm also Native supporting Natives and Lakota tribes of Nebraska on social media, but they're organizations, and I provide services to our Indigenous community here as well as South Dakota. But I've just added intertribal radio. And I actually came from Taino radio. And so I kind of did that analysis when I went and created intertribal radio. So there's, that kind of that working from that experience is what's helping me create, my brand now, is remembering those experiences, those, that I've had. And really how I've heard other radio stations, promote or do business, so I've really analyzed, SWOT analysis, from that point of view, not only as a consumer, but even with my experience. So I'm just trying to, keep building my brand and,
Absolutely.
so.
And that's the best thing to do. And that's one of the huge benefits that comes with experience is you can take little pieces of maybe everywhere you've worked or everything you're associated with or connections you have. And that's the beautiful thing about experience is you can take what you want from it and kind of leave the rest. And then hopefully by the end, all the good stuff that you've carried with you over years of experience builds a brand that you can really be proud of.
Right.
All right. Well, we have about 15 minutes left, and we sure don't need to take all the time if we don't need to. But are there any questions over what we went over today? Is there anything that you would like more examples on, or any aha moments that you'd like to kind of talk about again? All right. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for the time today. And I would just encourage you to continue to spend time on your brand, even if it's down to the tiniest thing of, here we've had a lot of wind in Nebraska. And so there's been litter blowing around, and maybe you have some litter by your front door that just gets caught there. You don't want that litter to be a part of your brand. You don't want people to think, oh, every time I go there, I have to step over trash. That seems like such a small thing. And it's something outside of your control, right? You can't control the wind and the leaves and stuff like that. But that over time would become part of your brand. And so I would just encourage you today and every day, just look at those little things and say, is this something that I want to implement? Is this something I can change? And if you don't know, I would encourage you to just ask. I like to start asking friends and family because they'll be honest with you and you're already asking about other things. So start with friends and family. Hey, I was thinking about pricing this at this price. What do you think? Would you pay that? And let them and tell them it's okay to be honest. And then after your friends and family, I would encourage you have a handful of those good customers that have been loyal, that have become friends, and they'd be the next ones. And again, if you can communicate it in the right way and say, hey, you've been a loyal customer for the past 5 years, and I really value your opinion. I'm thinking of adding this product line. What do you think? And again, if you can communicate that effectively, they're going to be honored that you asked, and they're going to be part of that because they feel like they kind of have a piece of that. And then when it's successful, they can tell their friends, oh yeah, they asked me about that and I thought that was a good idea. And then the third piece is then just listen, just be open to listening. So if you kind of overhear them saying like, oh, I couldn't find that, or maybe you keep getting asked for the same thing over and over, maybe that's a good sign that you need to move that to a different spot. Maybe it's too low on the shelf and needs to be moved up. Or maybe you overhear customers saying, oh, I know I can get that, I can order that online, or different things like that. And again, you can't please everyone, but just know that feedback think of it as a free survey that they filled out. Sometimes it's hard to get customers to fill out surveys, but when they make those little comments, that is a free survey. You can decide if you want to take it or leave it. But I would encourage you to continue to build your brand the way that you want to be built. So, all right. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys next week. We're going to give ourselves an online report card. No one's going to see this report card but you. So I hope that you can really come into this with an open mind, be honest, and we'll find those ways to increase our online presence. And so we'll see you guys. I believe it's the same link and that'll be going out, but we'll see you next week at 9 a.m. Central.
Before you go, I had a question.
Yes.
How do I access last week's webinar? This is the first one I attended, so
Do
I
you
don't
have
know.
the contact info for like Pete Upton?
I don't know. I just got a text yesterday, and so that's all I have.
If you want to just text back to that number and just ask, I believe that was Brent that sent that out. If you just want to text back and say, where can I access these online?
Okay.
They'll be able to give you that link. Yep. And
Awesome.
if not, you can reach out to Native 360.
Okay.
You can find them online at native360.org, and they're the ones that sponsored this, as well as Native CDFI Network.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.